Hi guys, it's been a while since I did one of these. If you don't know, I started a series of if and the design was a ... brand. The idea is basically that I redesign my own brand like in a different industry with the goal to just experiment with like different industries and deliverables. It's honestly kind of the epitome of a passion project. So the first one I did was if and the design is a film brand. You can check that out. I put the link in the description if you want to watch the video of that. This time though, it's if and the design was a record label. So we're redesigning the logo, doing the merchandise, social media layouts, everything. So let's get started. First up is changing the logo. My vision was to make this super bold and minimal. I wanted to keep a nice, bold but clean typeface for the word mark itself, and then see along the way how and if I would do a brand mark as well. I also had to keep in mind the different facets of the brand. I had to see where I could add like a piece of text that said like records, because it needs to be clear that it's a record label. And I thought otherwise it would not be clear enough that it is. So I wanted to make sure it actually is written in there. So at one point I arrived at this like oblique variation and I really liked it. So I started building on it and worked on some alternatives to create the logo suite. Then I also worked on some icons to enrich the brand and perhaps also to add to the logo or the merch as well. I feel like a globe was kind of necessary to show like it's like international in the brand. I also added a star because I was thinking it's going like to the stars, like going above and beyond basically to bring out the best music. Now, I wasn't completely done with like all the branding stuff, but I feel sometimes it's best to just go and apply it to see if all is working in the way I intended it to. So I started to work on like a cassette design to test my system so far. I also didn't really want to include any colors. It was just for me going to be like black and white to keep it as simple as possible because it needs to be like simple. The brand shouldn't be overcomplicated. It's also like inspired by the zeros. We're gonna get to that later with like some digicam pictures. It's a vibe. So first I made the die lines for the cassette from a cassette I actually own so that I could start to print it and actually put it like in the case, see if it looks good. Also gotta keep in mind which way is up for when it's printed because there's one part that's like flipped up and I need to make sure that's represented in the file. I found that I really liked the little monogram that I created. I think that'll be like the main brand asset because I thought it worked really, really well when I applied it here. So then I printed out the cassette die lines and tested them out. I went through the whole process of like folding and cutting and everything. I thought it was so much fun. I had a great time doing this. I feel sometimes I get a bit tired of sitting behind a screen all day, and doing these kinds of projects of arts and crafts really helps me kind of unwind and just do something else. So it's nice and analog, you know. I thought that also really fit the brand or the idea I had of it, because it's also very much inspired by like 80s 90s zeros sort of minimal design with like bold font and just a bit of effects also, as you can see in like in the design. Look at this. I really love it when a plan comes together and the die lines actually fit in real life. Honestly, it's happened too many times where I didn't actually work. Something was like too small, too big, and didn't fold. Like I didn't have like the fold lines on the right place. But this actually worked, and that's really nice. So I also repeated this process for the CDs, but I wanted to just create the layout for it and see how the assets worked on that. So again, I measured out like the CD die lines that I already have and made the die lines based on that. For this one though, I didn't print it because as I was designing, I thought it'd be nice to add pictures to it, and that would just cost too much ink for my printer. It's really struggling with that. So we're sticking to just the design and some mock-ups. I realized that overall the fonts work really well, and I'm really happy with like the general type layout that I went with, and also basically all the logo variations I had. I did notice some I would use more than others, so that was good to know. And the art direction is generally just really kind of old school, little analog, digicam, flash, zeros vibe. I think that also works really well when I applied it to this imaginary album design, and like the whole logo suite really fits into that, because like this album design is supposed to be like for a band or something, but it's also kind of representative of the record label and of the brand. And seeing it's all imaginary, I could just do whatever I want, you know? But I just wanted to use this to like communicate really the look and feel, also with visuals, like imagery. Also, these pictures are all taken by me with my trusty Canon PowerShot 810. Honestly, she's legendary at this point. I bring it everywhere with me. So at this point, I kind of left the concept as it was. I wanted to revisit it later after taking a break. In the meantime, I focused on some merch concepts, which we also still had to do. I put together all the assets I created, and seeing them on a merch item would really help me like validate their relevance, legibility, and general applicability to different real life situations. I experimented with basically all the assets I had and seeing which ones actually worked. So this was like my final sort of reflection moment, which ones were going to stay and which ones were not going to be used. And this process always feels like a lot of trust the process, because I just went in with assets, no real plan. I was just seeing if there's anything that stuck, that worked. So in the end, I felt that the last design that I showed here was the best way to go forward with. So I went back later to rework it and develop it further. But I thought you guys might kind of get bored of that. So I just did that off screen. But here are all the final designs. I'm really happy with how they turned out in the end. Also for the concept album, I think everything follows through really nicely, and there's like a clear art direction that you see in all the assets. There's a minimal style that I love combined with like the digicam zeros vibe, and I really like that too. So that's everything for the process of turning Anthe Design into a record label. I really hope you enjoyed. I have a few more ideas for other like industries or brands that I could turn my own brand into. But if you have any ideas, please do let me know in the comments and let me know what you think I should turn my brand into next time. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.